Voss artesian water from Norway. Splendidly still or luxuriously sparkling. Voss artesian water from Norway. Want to learn from Chicago's #1 culinary arts school? Kendall College now offers a certificate training program and individual cooking classes. Go to taste.kendall.edu for more information.
Bringing the great weather, and thank you for being with me tonight. We are sold out, completely oversold, booked, packed. It's wonderful to have everybody here with such great energy. My name is Elysabeth Alfano, and you are at Fear No Art Presents The Dinner Party. I invite 3 celebrities and a known chef who cooks for us, and over food and wine and chocolate and performances, the conversations flow. But the great thing about it is that our wonderful chef tonight, Carrie Nahabedian of Brandy and Naha, she's also cooking for you. So everyone in the audience is getting her appetizers, her entrees. You're getting Vos chocolate and Voss artesian water from Norway, and you're part of the conversation. So for those of us who are watching tonight on the Sun Times Splash section, and for those of you in the audience, we want you to tweet in your questions to us. And that way you're part of everything we're discussing. So it's going to be one big dinner party tonight. And if you do that, and you tweet in your questions, and we pick your question on stage, you can win dinner for 2 at Frontera Grill. Not the worst way to go. Cooking classes with Carrie Nahabedian, also not shabby. Plus we have Vos chocolate, we have books. There's lots of reasons for you to tweet us your questions. So this is how you do it. Grab out your handy cell phones, put them on mute, get on Twitter, and you want to send us your questions at @FearNoArtCHGO. Always use the hashtag #TheDinnerParty. Send us everything at FearNoArtCHGO. And the same goes for everybody who's watching us on the Sun Times website, the Splash website. Please send us your tweets. You can win as well. So I'm going to give you a second to get online, and I'm going to thank my sponsors because I love them. Of course, Voss artesian water from Norway. You're already enjoying that. They've been wonderful. Kendall College, the best cooking school in the land. I'm so happy that they're here with me, and they're going to be selling cookbooks after the show, so you got to stay, have more drinks, hang with us. We have 2 media sponsors, Windy City Times, which I love, and of course the Sun Times Splash section. I also want to thank the Richard H. Driehaus Foundation and 3 Arts because they are wonderful to us as well. Okay, enough logistics. We've got a lot to do today because we have a fabulous lineup. It's very exciting. My first guest really needs no introduction. Everybody here knows him. Everybody who's watching us from coast to coast knows him. He is restaurateur extraordinaire. He is a chef like there is no other. He is a wonderful TV personality and a great humanitarian. Please welcome Rick Bayless. Come on out, Rick Bayless.
Thank you so much.
Rick Bayless sitting right there.
Hello, everyone.
Rick Bayless is in the house. That's an awful lot of fun. Okay, our next guest, she is a New York Times best-selling author. Please welcome international writer Sara Paretsky. Not too shabby. We have not yet even started drinking. And of course we have New Yorker cartoonist, author, and funny man himself, Pat Byrnes, joining us. Woo, 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 woo. And again, we have the wonderful chef Carrie Nahabedian, who was working diligently in the kitchen to bring us some great food. So I'm going to sit with you, and the reason I've brought you all together, even though you seemingly have nothing in common. You actually have something wonderful in common.
We all like to eat.
You all like to eat, so there's that.
I try to do it every day.
Well, thank you for doing that every day. But before I talk to you about what you have in common, it's hard for me to focus on you when I know that there's great food coming our way. So let's take a peek into the Naha and Brendi kitchen and see what Carrie Nahabedian is making for our appetizers.
Hi, my name's Carrie Nahabedian. Many of you know me from Naha, but we're filming here today in our new restaurant, Brendi. Tonight we're starting the evening with a winter soup of chestnut and celery root, and it's scented with scotch and whiskey because chestnuts love whiskey. And it's finished with a little cream infused with coffee. And it'll get you started it'll warm you up for this long winter nights. So we're starting with a white, as we say, a white mirepoix, a little bit of celery, leek, and we're doing a little sweating of it. A sweat means to cook without browning. Cook it in whole butter. Of course, season it with salt, cracked black pepper. We use kosher salt. Then we're gonna have shelled, peeled, raw chestnuts. If you're scared, don't be scared of a chestnut. You can get them in the store. You can buy individual, already peeled chestnuts. Just don't buy them in candied in liquid because you'll suddenly be making dessert instead of soup. Then we have some beautiful celery root. You can see all the vegetables are sweating. And then we're gonna add some alcohol. We're putting a little touch of scotch, and always with alcohol, make sure that your flame is low so all of a sudden you don't have a flame out. So now we're going to add nice hot chicken stock. The trick to making soup is that you don't want to do all these beautiful steps and then use so much stock that you now lose the flavor. So we have a beautiful chicken stock that we've now reduced to get maximum flavor. We bring this up to a boil and we simmer it. We cook until the chestnuts are tender and until the celery root is absolutely perfectly cooked. So now we have heavy whipping cream. Don't make it with milk, skim milk, half and half. It doesn't stand a chance of breaking because we have so much liquid in there. One of the highlights of this soup is that we infuse cream with coffee beans. So we're just doing a little straining. So we're gonna start to whip it. So remember, cream and alcohol, they need to be incorporated. Too much alcohol, it'll just turn to a mess and you can't bring it back. So you just want to get that beautiful flavor into the dish. Nice soft peaks. Holds in the bowl. So now we're gonna garnish the bowl. I like to make a little ring of cream. This is so that you have flavor in every single bite. So now we're gonna do a little garnish of the pear. Small little rings of poached celery that we've julienne very fine. Now, if you're feeling really indulgent, you would use shaved truffles, foie gras, confit duck. You can do anything that you'd like. So then, small little bits of torn celery leaves. My mother uses celery leaves in just the regular family salad, just like she tears parsley. My mother's a really great cook. It's where I learned a lot of the passion that I have, because every meal that she made for us growing up, she had her whole heart and soul into it. Okay, so you have a nice little ring going. Then we're gonna take the caramelized wild rice and you're just gonna crush it. So you have the creaminess, the crunch, the fragrance. So start around the edges. The reason why you pour it like this, because when you pour the bowl, it rises up like a raft. So there you have it. Winter soup of roasted chestnut and celery root with a creme de cafe with puffed wild rice and bosc pear. Enjoy.
Okay, did you get all that? That was quite a complicated soup. And there are so many of you tonight that Carrie is still wickedly plating in the kitchen. So she's going to be out with us in a minute. So I wanted to bring you three together. And what you have in common is through your work, you've all been a part of changing something pretty big on a social scale. So Pat, yes, you have written a book about what it's like to be a stay-at-home dad.
Yes, I have.
And that is sort of changing in society. And you haven't changed it all on your own, but that's something that sort of...
Oh, yeah, here I am.
And Sara, everyone knows her book. Who has read, of course, Sara Paretsky, V.I. Warshawski, of course.
If you haven't, see me after the show. The test is next week.
So, of course, V.I. Warshawski was a character that never existed before. She was the first female private investigator. So you created her at a moment in time when women's lib, let's say, was changing things, but she was still a first. And then, of course, Rick, you work with your farmer foundation, Frontera Farmer Foundation. Such a philanthropist. And so since 2003, you've been working with small farms, and we've seen that change dramatically, how we now look at farming practices.
Right.
And
yes.
So each of you has been impactful, and we're going to talk about that throughout the dinner periodically with different moments in time. But I also have something else that you have in common, and that is you're incredibly busy. So I don't even know how you could write for the New Yorker and have two kids at home all the time. And I know that writers are very particular about how they write, but I think you take the cake in terms of how busy you are. You just told me backstage you're working on your 9th cookbook. Yes. The 9th season of Mexico One Plate at a Time is out, and you're working on season 10. You have Cascabel coming out. You have your restaurants, of course. I would like to know how you manage all these things and how you protect your creative time.
Oh, the creative time, that's the most important thing, because you can get so tied up with doing stuff and meetings and all that kind of stuff. And of course, I think we all know that that just sucks the life out of your creative energy. So I do my creative stuff on the other ends of the day. So early in the morning, I do a lot of creative work. And then later in the evening, I do a lot of creative work. And then I give my daytime to keeping the whole thing running.
But it's a lot of irons in the fire.
It's a lot of irons in the fire, but it's all because we have such an amazing staff. And we only grow as fast as our staff is able to take on the next project. So a lot of people don't realize just how many people it takes to run. Those 3 restaurants that are together on Clark Street, that's 160 employees that are there. And so, I mean, I know you walk in there and you just think everything looks sort of like it just happens. And you get your food and all that sort of stuff.
People say that to me, and it's not that way.
It's so for me, it's all about growing with the staff, and we just have amazing people we work with. Many that we have worked with for, well, we've been 27 years there on Clark Street, and we have a number of staff that's been there 25 of those years. So
oh my gosh.
It's, it's all about the staff.
So you actually protect it? You say, like, no one bothered me from 7 to 9, and no one bothered me from 9 to 11.
Yeah, it's sort of that way. It's
and then
sometimes
when do you sleep?
That's right.
Well, let's just say I work kind of long days, but if I can, I'm one of those people that can actually, like, really close off from everything else. And I have a couch in my office. Sit on that couch, and I open my computer, and I just go into my own world, and I can be working on TV shows or books or something creative with the new menu, and it's my little place that I can go in. I do the same thing at home.
It's wonderful to have that creative space. Speaking of creative spaces, Carrie Nahabedian is now ready, so she's going to come out and join us. She got, so come over here, because I'm going to ask you, okay, so I don't know if people got a sense from that video, but you are so incredibly detailed. Talk to me about why that's so important to you.
Well, success is in the details.
It really is.
That's what the quote says, and that's really what it's all about. Because I gave a presentation for the city with Elysabeth a couple weeks ago, and I talked about success and details, and we did a video of all details. So from the starting of my career and then through 20, 30 years.
Yes, a long time.
Ending with Four Seasons, and then going into Naha, and then into Brandy. And 2 of my little cousins were there, who are 10 and 6, now 6 today. And afterwards, we went out for lunch, and we went to a restaurant that will remain unnamed. And my little cousins got grilled cheese sandwiches, and they looked at me and went, "Not too much detail in these grilled cheese sandwiches." And because one side was brown and the other wasn't, and one sandwich had cheese, the other one didn't have a lot. So if you start young, you're gonna make the difference. And one of my sisters is here now. My mother always would say that when she asked my 2 sisters to dust, they just went around the table.
That's me. That's what I do.
And then when I would dust, I took every single thing off the shelf and polished each thing, because that's just the way. In the kitchen, we say there's 2 ways to do it: my way and the wrong way.
But I think this is very indicative. How many of you have eaten at Brandy, which has now been open a year or so? Okay, so not enough of you. We're all going. Well, 210. We're going to have to go in shifts.
It doesn't hold that many.
It doesn't hold that
It
many.
only fits about 50.
It doesn't hold that many.
So tell me why you wanted to bring back that sort of traditional French cuisine. Because it is, I mean, that has sort of gone by the wayside, that kind of cooking and service, and you've really brought it back.
Well, I don't think it's gone by the wayside. I just feel that the recession and the economic downturn made everything bad okay. That all of a sudden it was,
I see.
you paid for your bag, you paid for bread, you paid for your bag to get on an airline, you pay, and you never get to hear, the customer's always right. That went right out the window, which our Rick and my dear late friend Charlie Trotter would always say, the customer isn't always right. They just think they're always right, which is, but I think the economic downturn made everything that we all thought about, but never dared do, make it okay. So the whole idea that people had to go into a restaurant and suddenly pay for bread and pay for eating at 8 o'clock or 8:30 and things like that. I just like the idea of when I go and eat in a restaurant, even if you're not eating in a restaurant that doesn't have tablecloths or whatever, you just have that level of service, that level of attention. The reason why you go out to eat is because you want an experience. Whether you're eating at Naha or Brandy or you're eating at McDonald's, you have in your mind a level of service. And I think a lot of that slipped away for about 3 years, and people forgot that the reason why you go to eat at a restaurant, go to eat at a bar, is that you want to escape your life. It's the same way when you go to a movie. Totally, right? You want to escape your life. And when we opened Brandy, which means a branch with a new growth in French, it was just a level of refinement. It wasn't meant to be a special occasion restaurant. It wasn't. We don't have a dress code, and we worked really hard at saying that people can come in and just have a drink at the bar and have a little steak tartare or have soup or just have a great cocktail. But it's all about the fact that we have a lot of our customers that are like, why do I always have to go out on Friday or Saturday night? Can I eat well on a Tuesday, Wednesday night,
or a Monday night?
Or a Monday night. And so it's been a process. Naha is in its 14th year.
Yay! Woo. Well, I know you're working on a process right now also in the kitchen, so you're going to be back with us. She's working on our entrees, some wonderful rabbit rillettes ravioli.
So we did a little thing today because we didn't know what the weather was going to be like. So you started with a little winter with the chestnut, scotch, coffee, the puff wild rice, and now you're going to have a little bit of spring rabbit rillette ravioli and pea shoots and fresh juice carrot broth, and because we hope this is the first day.
Yes, we hope. We hope. Rachel will take this. Okay, so she's going to be right back with us. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Carrie. Wasn't that soup so good? And when she comes back, we're going to talk to her about the influence that she's had in Chicago. But picking up on where we were, to protect your creative time?
It's called kindergarten. Yes.
Sending children to school?
Yeah, before it was nap time. Now it's send them off. Or there's always child neglect. That's a very...
Oh, that's handy.
Yeah. That's a good one. Go here. Here's a knife. Go play.
Although if you're married to the Illinois State's Attorney, I don't think you really get to... Everyone knows that he's married to Lisa Madigan, probably, so... All right, so...
I've been outed.
So you don't really get to physically harm your children. I don't think
I don't get to, but you know, the psychological... Go play. I'm very old school because I'm old.
It's better for them, actually.
Yes,
they
actually,
shouldn't have
it
helicopters over them.
But you're absolutely correct. I mean, Rick was talking about protecting your creative time. Your creative time is that time where you play, where my kids go, I'm bored. And I'm like, oh, that's great. How exciting. You get to go figure out what you want to do.
Yes.
And they grumble about that. And 2 minutes later, they're like, oh my God, how do you think that they built an airport? And it's a lot of Legos and bits of paper that they find everywhere and like to try and shred it and turn a house into a habit trail. But it's creative, nevertheless, and that's where it begins, by having that time without structure.
Right, to allow yourself the ability to let your mind wander. I mean, I think of, the 200 people in this room. How many of you now plan out your days by 10-minute increments? Mm-hmm. Remember when you were going through high school or whatever college, it used to be like, oh, you had an hour class, mm-hmm. But now people plan them by 10 and even 5-minute increments. So there's no time left for any sort of creativity. What about you?
Yes.
How do you plan your...
What I think is interesting about children and creativity is children and guns. Everyone I know who is anti-gun and won't allow their children to have toy guns in the house finds that the child eats a piece out of the bagel and turns it into a weapon.
Why is that, Pat? Why?
I don't know. Before my younger daughter knew what a gun was, she knew what a shooter was. I made a shooter out of, and it was the most random things. I don't know why.
Okay.
It's kind of the Lord of the Flies, isn't it? They start really lethal and horrible, and you hope by the time that they're teenagers
I'm sure there's something Darwinian, not just the survival. You got to kill something in order to survive.
Calm down and that they're socialized.
I want to make sure everyone can hear them because we have a lot of people in the house tonight. I know there's lots of clanking and stuff.
You don't want to hear that.
All that was
it was the Hunger Games that have come to life here on the table.
Well, okay, so I already have a tweet for Rick, and this very lucky person has won dinner for two at Frontera Grill. So the rest of you, I don't know why you were asleep at the wheel. You should have been tweeting much faster. Okay, this tweet is from Ara_Lucia. She wants to know, what was the first dish that had an impact on you that made you want to create?
Oh, that's a really good one. I grew up in a restaurant family, so I had food around me all the time. My grandmother was an amazing cook, and she did the opposite of the restaurant food. She did the food that you just wanted to hang out at her table, and it was soul-satisfying, heartwarming kind of food. And I don't know if this is the first dish exactly that had a big impact on me, but it's one that always has had and continues to have, and that's peach cobbler.
Really?
So this is a peach cobbler in our family was more than just a dish that came to the table, because all the grandkids would get together and we would go with our grandmother to a peach orchard, and we would harvest all of the peaches from this peach orchard.
Where was this?
And this is in Oklahoma City. I grew up in Oklahoma City. So we have one person from Oklahoma City. So yes, here she is. Thank you very much. Yes. And we would drive south to Pauls Valley, which was completely covered with all these peach orchards, and we would harvest them, and it was really fun. But the most dramatic part of the whole experience was coming back in my grandmother's fishtail Cadillac with all those peaches and 7 grandchildren in the car. And it smelled so intensely of peaches. And then for the next 3 days after that, we canned the peaches. We made them into peach butter, pickled peaches, all different kinds of preparations that then became the base of every time that the big family got together, we would eat peach cobbler. So I would say that that still resonates with me as probably the most dramatic experience I've ever had as a kid with food.
Because of the emotional connection.
It was.
Yeah.
It was all of
And
that
the
stuff.
smell.
It meant something, and it was the emblem of our family that we all got together and we ate peach cobbler for every big occasion.
Well, things have
Lovely.
changed a little bit for you. So you've gone from peach cobbler to Oaxaca. Maybe we can take a peek at season 9. What's going on in Mexico?
I agree with a lot of people who think of Oaxaca as the epicenter of the food world here in Mexico. And in the over 30 years that I've been coming here, I've seen quite an evolution. I would say that the most exciting part of that evolution for me is all these young chefs who are totally in love with the traditional cuisine. They're adopting it, adapting it, and evolving it into some of the most contemporary cuisine that you'll find anywhere. Their kitchens are just filled with passionate, skilled young cooks. And though Oaxaca is a sort of smallish town, these restaurants can hold their own with some of the best restaurants in the world. This is Danzantes. It's known for an amazing design and a very progressive bar and signature mezcal program. But the real appeal for me is the fabulous menu that's created by Chef Miguel Ángel Jiménez.
Bueno, lo que vamos a hacer es un mogo mogo, que es un albondigón.
And he's now working on season 10, which is such an amazing feat. I wanted to pick up with Sara because you also, created such an iconic figure in V.I. Warshawski. So what impresses me with what you do is, I'm going to read you something from V.I. Warshawski's horoscope. So you have researched your character so much that you've actually written a horoscope for her, and it goes like this. V.I. Warshawski was born on July 27th with the sun in Leo and Gemini rising. Her chart reads, extremely active by nature. You like to get around and meet people. Very restless. You can't seem to stay put. Because of the high nervous tension you always have, your athletic activity would be a good way for you to burn off energy. So I want to talk to you about how you research your stories and your books, because this is so incredibly detailed that you know she has a Gemini rising.
Well,
Is it true?
It's true that I researched her horoscope,
Okay.
and that's what they said in the online horoscope site that I consulted. And I thought it was so
The curtain falls.
What I'm really impressed with is the level of detail that Elizabeth brought to this, because this is buried in the FAQs on my website, VI's horoscope. So thank you for digging deep. And Lisa Hazen, my web mistress, thanks you too, because she put a lot of work into getting all those pages up there. But the same website that I consulted that gave me VI's really right-on-target horoscope also said that George Bush was a loyal man who was well-loved by his friends, and maybe that also is true.
Everybody's got friends.
So
V.I. Warshawski's birthday is like 4 days off of Harry Potter's. So,
which way?
well, he's.
I mean, is he August 1st or July 23rd?
The 31st, same as.
Oh, 31st. Well, I can't add. Ooh.
J.K. Rowling.
No more wine for me. I thought
Okay,
4
I'm
plus
almost out, so I'll
27
have
was
yours.
1.
This show has already taken a turn. I knew this would happen.
But I think my favorite, well, two things that I did for the books that were really great fun. For my second book, Deadlock, which is set in the Great Lakes shipping industry, I actually rowed an ore ship from Thunder Bay just on the western edge of Lake Superior in Canada to the Welland Canal. And I was still working full-time downtown then. I didn't have a lot of money. I had $600 in my bank account. They gave me the run of the ship. It was really wonderful, and put me up in the stateroom where the last person in it had been head of the Canada Grain Commission. And I kept thinking, what is this going to cost? And can I kite a check or, And finally, my last day on board, just as we reached Niagara Falls, I said to the captain, no one has said anything as vulgar as money, but what does this cost? And he said, oh, we can't charge you. Then we'd have to advertise it's a passenger ship. So I had this wonderful Great Lakes sea voyage. My other wonderful research opportunity was being on the 36th floor of the AT&T building right after they had poured the deck and the building was under construction. The project manager was really annoyed that his boss had let me onto the site without approving it with him first. And so he took me without a safety belt to the edge of the deck where I obediently turned green and started to fall over. And he grabbed me, as you know, because I'm sitting here tonight. And then, having seen me just about really faint and fall off the building, he then was very affable. I'd paid a price, and he spent a whole day showing me how a building was constructed layer by layer. So you start at the unenclosed deck that's just been poured, and then each layer down has a little bit more added to it. So my work has given me some really fun opportunities to learn about things that I never would have had a chance to do.
Do you find that people will open up to you when you go say, well, I'm researching this? I mean, can you go up to a scam artist or one of those telemarketers and say, I know this is a scam, but can I just ask you how your scam works? Because I'm a writer. I'm a writer. You can tell me.
If I had more nerve, I would do it, and I'm sure they would open up. Although it would be a funny scene in a movie more than in a book as to who was scamming who better. But I tend to freeze with scam artists. I tend to become very gelid. But what I do find is, when I was first starting out, no one would talk to me. I wanted this Great Lakes experience, and so I called companies in Chicago that shipped on the lakes, and they just laughed at me. And then my husband, who served in the Royal Navy during the Second World War, we used to like to go up to Sault Ste. Marie and watch the big ships go through the locks. So we started writing down the owners their names are painted on the back of the ship, and I called Canada Steamship in Montreal.
Oh, they're very polite.
Their biggest shipper on the Great Lakes. And I said, I'm a writer. I was an unpublished writer, but I was a writer. Mm-hmm. And they said, well,
do you want quite the same pull, but...
They said, do you want to sail for a day, a week, a month, or a year? And I had a week of vacation left at CNA, so I said, a week. And they said, be at Thunder Bay at 7 o'clock Monday morning, go to Elevate or whatever, and get on the J.W. McGiffin.
Wow.
So now it's a little easier. Now that more people know my name, it's a little easier. They don't laugh quite so loudly. And U.S. Steel no longer exists. Ha, ha, ha.
So do you try to do everything that's in your book? Because you have 17 books now, isn't that right? Probably work on your 18th. So do you try to do everything that you've written?
A lot of it I imagine.
I strangled a longshoreman once just to see how long it took.
Like V.I. jumps from a gantry into the sanitary canal. No, I didn't try that.
Do that one, yes.
But the book that I'm working on, I'm hoping to set a scene in the tunnels underneath Wrigley Field, and I do have somebody who, if it ever thaws,
if you can,
is going to take me down there and let me see where you could put a body, or the entire starting roster, really.
Yeah, Yes, I heard
maybe we need to do. I don't know.
they lost their first game today, I heard already. So
Yeah, so that's one that they don't have to lose at the end of the season.
Does everybody know how VI was created? This is a great little story. I have a video clip of when I interviewed Sara a couple years back, and she told me the story. Let's see if we can roll that short clip.
I was working for CNA Insurance in downtown Chicago, and we were in a meeting, and my lips were saying, "Oh, Fred, heck of an idea," and the balloon over my head was saying something unprintable. And really, literally, in that moment, looking down at the dead trees in Grant Park, VI came to me. I thought, I don't want, like, you know, a male detective in drag. I want a woman who's like me and my friends. She's doing the job that didn't exist when we were in high school. But she's saying what's in the balloon over her head because she doesn't worry about what they think of her or getting fired.
And that is true. I was thinking private thoughts on company time.
So I have a tweet for you from JMAC92. What is the effect that you have seen or hope to see your work play in the community? And I will say for this tweet, you are winning a signed copy of one of Sara's books, and you're also getting a case of Voss water. So lucky you. What is the effect that your work has had, or you hope to see it have?
I think that partly my writing, creating this woman character, and partly the work that I did in creating the advocacy group Sisters in Crime has made it easier for women to see themselves in books, see themselves as writers. I hope that the work that I do in the community through some of the foundation work that I do also makes children of both sexes who feel marginalized, feel more empowered to take chances in their lives.
Wonderful. Gosh, wonderful. I didn't fully realize how much time you had spent with that foundation.
Well, I support 10 501c3 organizations, and it comes and goes with how much I'm able to do with them. One of my absolute favorites is a group called Girls in the Game, which does sports with girls in Chicago public schools, where they really, recess has been eliminated in a lot of public schools, and
art programs.
And art programs, and music programs, and cooking programs, and cartoon programs.
That would fall under art, I guess. But that competition is kind of like a sport in itself, but it's a blood sport.
Which?
The competition against all the programs that we need that are fighting for funding.
Well, I mean, joking aside, this is really the leavening that society needs if we're going to thrive as a democracy, not rote memorization for tests, but the creative work in whatever field. And children should be exposed to creative work in many fields so that they see what their métier is.
I actually I write for the Huffington Post, and I interviewed 5 CEOs and or large entrepreneurs, and I had asked them if the arts had affected them in any way. Had they had any arts in their upbringing, and if so, had they carried that through to their adult lives? And they all said that because of the arts, they felt that they had a competitive advantage in business because it made them original thinkers, and therefore they were craftier thinkers, and they wouldn't have had this had they not been exposed to the arts. So, and they all said, and they were different, you know,
So
one was
the dark
banking.
side of the arts.
I don't know. I thought it was a very interesting perspective.
Do you think that being an artist has made you a better CEO?
What does that stand for? I mean, it's better CEO. I mean, you should be. I mean, the creativity is. We were talking about this backstage. That creativity is fundamental in anything. I started out in a very creative field of aerospace engineering, and true story. That's not a joke.
Yes.
The jokes will actually be almost funny. Anyway, some of the most creative people I ever worked with. Now I moved on to advertising, voiceover, and cartooning, and other things I can't really talk about. And some of the most creative people I ever worked with were some of those engineers. I mean, the one guy, we had a problem, because they have to solve problems.
Yes, you have to.
We had a problem, like how to take something in something not much bigger than a shoebox and make a door, the invisible door open, something come flying out, and the door close immediately because, things that fly, you don't want doors hanging open because that's bad for some reason. And some guy figured out, how to do it, and he tried to explain it, and everyone I don't get that. And so he concocted something out of rubber bands and coat hangers. And he sprung the rubber bands thinking, and you're thinking, damn, how'd that work? And it was just so brilliantly creative that it still sticks with me.
Oh, that's great.
And he was solving a problem.
Right.
Any sort of creativity is really just solving a problem. Like, how do I get this toilet paper off my shoe without people laughing at me? How?
That's a problem. But you have
gotta
often.
figure it out. And you find people will be tremendously creative in a situation like that.
I think it's very important that people recognize today in the modern world that when you say you want to be professional, and I run into this all the time in big meetings, that everybody thinks that they have to be buttoned down and nobody can joke, nobody can sort of spin ideas. To me, if you want to get anything done, there has to be humor involved in it at some point. You have to be able to laugh. You have to be able to laugh at yourself, because once you start laughing at yourself, that's when you get really creative, because all the barriers are down.
That's right.
You're not protecting anything. And to me, I always bring that to all the meetings that we have at our restaurants. Is I just want everybody to laugh, relax, and then get creative.
Because when you're laughing at yourself, you're questioning yourself. You're saying well, is this really the best idea?
Right.
And then that might push you off into something else accidentally.
Yes, it's so true.
And accidents are where a lot of the good things really happen.
That's what we were talking about backstage.
Yes, if you don't let yourself go off road, you're not really going to find that new direction.
You're not going to find the good stuff.
We were also talking backstage about Julia Child and what an original, now so many of the cooking shows are so rote, and you have to have this sophomoric personality that's sort of quotidian in a way. And she had this original sense to her, and she said whatever she wanted. Anything came out of her mouth. And she was such an original, and,
and she would just pick the chicken, or was it a duck, off the floor and dust it off.
Oh, yes.
But, the sense of play, and this is why, going back to your kids, making them have free time, whether it's not structured, that's where creative comes from. And I think often when I'm stuck in a book, as I almost always am, for days at a time, that Richard Feynman, who my husband, who was taught physics at the University of Chicago, was his idol among the 20th century physicists. But he discovered something about electron spin, which is classified, so I can't tell you tonight what it is. But he was standing in line in the Cornell Faculty Club, and he was juggling plates, which really annoyed a lot of his colleagues. But watching the way the rim moved, well, you tell this story because you know this.
No, he's watching kids toss up plates, and he was. Sorry, nerd. And so he was watching the plates go up in the air, and the kids were just tossing like pizzas. And he had been really stressed out all the time, but he started kicking back, and he was watching that. And he saw the plates, as they go up, and they're just flipping. The kids were just laughing, and they did this little wobble. And he thought, I wonder what the heck causes that wobble. And he started working out the equations. And it was those equations that brought him his Nobel Prize.
No, but it was playing that made him start thinking about it, because he had been working on it for a number of years, and it was the play that made it happen.
But yeah, because it was the play, because it started out the play, and then just cool, he was playing, and then later when he faced a problem, there it was, because he was always talking about the more different things you try. I mean, we were talking about all the different arts and the cooking and this. You have more tools to put in your toolbox, and you have more ways to come at a problem. And that's what creativity is all about.
There's a great Steve Jobs quote, and I've said it before on this show. He's always saying that the people he worked with, they weren't necessarily more creative. It's just that they had had more experiences in life. And so they had more dots to connect because they had experienced more things. And so the more just experiences you have in life, the more creative you can be.
So if you're looking to hire the older worker.
Well, maybe this is a chance, though, to have Sara read for us a bit of your work so that we can all get a sense for what it is that you write.
I'm not going to read from VI, and I'm not going to read very long. My books are complicated, and I'm only allowed 3 minutes, so it would take that long to set up the backstory. I'm going to read from a short story, and because this is a food evening, this is a dinner party, A Taste of Life. I'm going to read just little fragments of it. Daphne Rader worked in the bookkeeping department at Rapelec, Inc. Her capacity for work, her appetite for it, was insatiable. In January, when accountants go mad closing previous year's books, Daphne flourished. Everyone at Rapelec loved Daphne in January. Flowers appeared on her desk and chocolates. In February, these blandishments disappeared and Daphne lived alone behind her barricade of ferns. She was smart, she was willing, she was capable, but she was also very fat. Daphne was an excellent cook. She could make elaborate French dinners, including elegantly decorated pastries. Food and wine were so outstanding that her co-workers longed for invitations and would exclaim at their hostess, who barely touched her food, "How could she be so fat when she scarcely ate?" After they left, Daphne would pull another 4 portions from the oven and devour them. Daphne's present condition was sad to those who knew her as an elfin child. What had happened? Family friends blamed her mother, Sylvia, who was a top model. When Daphne was born, Sylvia delighted in the photographs. Hovering sentimentally over a white-clad infant only enhanced her popularity. But as Daphne moved from infant seats to kindergarten, she became an encumbrance. If the child was growing up, the mother must be aging. So Sylvia force-fed Daphne and turned her into the fat woman that she is today, or was today. However, one day into Daphne's life came a beautiful young accountant, Jerry, and they fell in love, and Daphne lost weight, and she actually was able to buy clothes in an actual dress shop instead of making them for herself. Sylvia arrived in Chicago and was just furious. Daphne in love, Daphne getting thin, no. So Sylvia seduces the poor unfortunate Jerry away from Daphne. And the morning after Jerry hasn't come home for the night, well, Sylvia's courtship of Jerry was long and difficult. She postponed winter plans and stayed in Chicago, hosting parties, making a splash at all the society events, getting Jerry to escort her when Prince Philip hosted a dress ball at the British consulate. And then the morning that Jerry hasn't come home all night, Sylvia shows up at the apartment to get his clothes. "Buzz off now, Daphne, and finish your cookies," Sylvia snapped, slapping Daphne across the face. Daphne picked up the dressing table lamp and began pounding Sylvia's head with it. Sylvia fell against the dressing table, dead long before Daphne stopped screaming and hitting her. Finally, Daphne's rage subsided. She collapsed on the floor by Sylvia's body and began to cry. Jerry would never come back to her. No one would ever love her again. She wanted to die herself, to eat and eat until she was engulfed by food. Mechanically, methodically, still weeping, she lifted Sylvia's left arm to her mouth.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I am a fan. I am most definitely a fan. I would like to know, how many hours a day do you write?
It's writing and thinking. The writing, I write fast when I know what I'm saying, but a lot of times I will be at my machine for 6 or 8 hours writing 5 words.
Right.
And I try, especially because I'm late on my deadline, I write genre fiction, which is considered let's not even talk about the annoying state of publishing today for genre fiction. Many of my peers, such as Lee Child and Janet Ivanovich, are now writing 2 or 3 books a year, and I'm like, I'm behind on my deadline, and I can only write 1 book every 15 months. So if I could write faster, I would, but I'm a slow thinker. And so there's a way in which I'm never actually not working. But
I understand this.
Yeah.
It's always churning in the back of your mind.
And I'm not playing enough, and so because I'm so anxious about the fact that I'm late and I can't solve the problem, and is the book a wreck, and will everybody hate it, and so all of that gets in my way and slows me down.
Well, I was going to ask all of you this question. Do you feel pressure? You're on book 18. You're on season 10. You just did a book, and you know, for the New Yorker, you have cartoon after cartoon after cartoon that has to be funny. Do you worry? Does that pressure get to you that you have to perform? It does.
No, never.
Because in a way, you think you might be used to it by now.
We're going to take this knife now, Pat. And
my wife has very delicately referred to me as squirrel head.
What?
Squirrel brain.
Oh,
sorry.
she's corrected you.
Corrected.
It's squirrel brain.
Yes, squirrel brain. Because I am constitutionally incapable of doing just one thing. There's the most dangerous thing in my world is 10 minutes to go. I don't have anything to do.
Wait, I think we have a great comic of him multitasking.
Oh.
Can you find that, Nicole? There's a great New Yorker comic of him.
Oh, man.
I don't know if everybody can see that. Sarah's going to go check it out for you. So, Pat's version of multitasking.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, because that's when, because that's the time where I can relax and play. And that's where the next idea comes from. And unfortunately, sometimes those ideas will be things that like, wow, you can think of it like that. But then to execute it, it's like you'll think of an idea for a book. Great! Then writing.
You got to write the book, yes.
And you've got to write that
And that's
book.
where all the work is. And that's, I had an idea for something that, it was a cartoon. I was trying to make funny. And I couldn't. It was this close to funny. It would have been a kind of a witty quip at a cocktail party, but I just couldn't turn that corner and make it be worth investing 10 minutes to make it a rough that will get rejected, and I could forget about it from there. And then as I'm letting it die, I thought, there's actually a serious idea in there that consumed the next 3.5 years of my life.
The next 3.5 years.
And so, those accidental moments when you're just letting one idea die, you might see it from a different angle, and ideas are scary.
Because you don't know where it's going to take
They don't know where you're going to
or when they're going to come.
Yeah.
Right.
You just have to be open to it all the time.
Yeah.
And be willing to go through, as you could imagine, just like long dry spells where nothing is happening and you still show up. That's the whole thing. I think that the difference between somebody who's successful and somebody who's not successful is that the successful person always shows up.
Yes.
Mary Oliver has something to say about that in her, Mary Oliver, the Pulitzer Prize-winning poet, has a handbook on poetry, and she says that about the muse. She says, if Romeo had come to the window and Juliet wasn't there, you wouldn't have a love story or a tragedy.
Right.
And the muse doesn't come if you're not willing to show up.
Right.
Yes.
And if I can segue into something more parental, it's like quality time.
Yeah.
Quality time is a function of quantity time. People talk about, I have quality time with my kids. No,
it's quantity.
Good luck with that. You got to be there for a long time until something happens, and that only happens as if you're there enough time.
So not missing the small moments.
Well, and I said, for me, with my daughter, that I wasn't quite sure exactly how to really bond with her, and so we just started making dinner together. That was it was only in the small moments when she was grating the cheese and I was sautéing the whatever, and that stuff would just come out. But you couldn't plan it. You couldn't say, okay, let's sit down and have the quality time now.
Amen.
It just had to come out normally, naturally, in the small moments.
It's interesting that you say that, because that's a common thing that you do in improv, is they teach you to busy yourself pretend that you're folding laundry, pretend that you're ironing, pretend that you're chopping carrots. And that's when your mind then frees up because you've busied yourself.
You're doing something.
And so cooking is great for that connection time because you're all sort of futzing, and then your brain starts to go free and you start to connect.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, but that's relationship building.
Right.
Doing something together. I mean, there's no better way to get to know somebody than to do something with them.
Together,
Buddy and I, for fun, for projects. They go, I need to install a new toilet in my house. Yeah, I'll be right over. And
can't wait.
And but those would turn into adventures. I had them over like I need to move a stove, and so we still laugh at with me having my head pinned against the stairs by this stove that slid down. It was a Three Stooges moment, but. That's what makes. We wouldn't have been able to have those physical injuries without doing
I'm definitely taking that knife away.
I have a tweet for you, and this tweet is from, hey, Jordan Moser, you must be in the audience. Jordan is going to win your signed book, and he is also going to win the tape of Sara Paretsky's most recent book. She has an audio tape as well that you're going to win.
Nice.
So the question for you is, when, how, and why did you decide to focus your art on cartoons? And I will add to that, how do you create a cartoon?
Well, first of all, I did not decide to be a cartoonist.
And please eat, everybody.
You do not go to your high school career day and say, like, all right, well, systems analyst, biologist, cartoonist. I'll look at the cartooning. You don't do that. I mean, you become a cartoonist because you have to. It's a genetic condition. And you do it because you can't not do it.
You have no choice.
Yes, it's something that compels you. It's something that is very life-saving in a lot of ways, because those comments that you could make that will get you punched in the face. If you don't say them, but instead write them down in a little notebook, that makes you a cartoonist. and it keeps you alive instead of being that wise ass who got what was coming to him. And so you don't know where it's coming from, but it's something that you write down. So that's the how and the why. After that, you just figure out, all right, well, what do I do? And then, well, you take all your little ideas, you draw them up, you make copies, and I wish it was more romantic than this. You stuff them in an envelope, you send them somewhere, and you wait.
How long is the wait to get into the New Yorker?
It could be any length of time. I submitted some stuff in college, and it was awful. It was awful. But then, out of college, I made like 2 or 3 submissions, like every 3 or 4 years, and they were lame. They were awful. It was a week before my 39th birthday.
And you got in.
I had recently started submitting again because I had gone through a cycle of, we have #1 best-selling author James Finn Gardner in the house tonight. I had written a bunch of gags for a project that he was working on, and he needed something had to be done fast, and so he enlisted the help of a couple of gag writers, and I churned out a bunch of gags in quick time. I was drawing a lot for a comic strip that I had that was in development, and so I thought, okay, I'm ready now.
So you felt that it was your time.
So it was my time, and then it happened fairly quickly. But there are guys that for me, but really, it was really close to 20 years, and that's fairly normal for a lot of guys.
Is it the caption first, and then you draw for it, or do you have the drawing and then you find the caption?
It's the idea first.
Aha.
You're writing a show. You're writing a very, very short show, and so you have to come up with the script. You're the prop master, you're the director, cinematographer, you're everything
all in one
for that short little show. Because there's something that came before that, and something is happening here, and something is coming after it, and you've got to tell all that story right there. And there might be relationships involved, and a lot of it's got to be quick and iconic, obviously.
Yes.
But in that snapshot moment, there's a story.
Nicole, maybe we have the one with the snowmen. It's one of my very, very favorite cartoons. I love this cartoon. So, yes, go ahead, Sarah. two snowmen and one's trying to kill himself with a hairdryer. So, and how long might something like that come to be?
40-some years. I mean, that can happen in a moment. I mean, tragically, that was probably partly inspired by a retoucher who had taken some iconic picture from Vietnam, which was an execution, and he put, instead of a gun, he put a hairdryer, and it was bleak, it was dark, but it was, you know, for a guy who's a photo retoucher, you go like, well, damn, that's good. But so that artifact was probably stuck in the lint trap of my brain, and it was winter, and you know, because I have a hair dryer.
Really?
I have it in my office.
Doesn't take you too long.
You know, it doesn't. Seriously, I take a towel in my hair, it's combed and dried all in one, and but I have a hair dryer for watercolors. Because, you know, when you're working on a deadline, you can't sit there and, I'll wait for this wash to dry, and then it'll be beautiful.
So you blow dry your art. Oh, that's great.
I got to keep working. It's due by 5. And so...
and that's what happens with those 10 minutes. You can style your daughter's hair.
yeah, 10 minutes. 10 minutes, that's a whole morning. So don't get me started. But... so the hair dryer's sitting there by my dryer. So it was all right there.
So it's interesting how one idea leads to another. You're working on something that I think is so important. We talked about this earlier, how you're all working on important social changes in different ways.
That was my intention.
I bet it was. So we all know what an emoticon is, right? You have a smiley face or you have a frown face. But you were realizing that there are, of course, a gazillion emotions in between smiley and frowny. And so you had put together the full spectrum of emotions. I think there's 64.
And this was the cartoon that didn't work out. There were like 343, 7 cubed.
Explain what the cartoon that didn't work and where it took you. This is great work.
Wow, this is a hard thing to explain because it's really hard to explain even visually. I wanted to do an emoticon that animated, and I wanted to use the iPhone interface where you had the gestures of up, down, left, right, pinch, and stretch. And I wanted to be able for you to say like, well, I'm feeling, and then just kind of follow some intuitive cues. And so where up is, you know, for the up and down, left and right is volume, so it's going from, and then the pinch and stretch. So with those, I want to say, all right, what can I do with that to try and let that kind of animate? So it looks like animation, a film strip that takes me to any like reactive emotion. And that took like 3.5 years to get this whole thing with the technology and working out a matrix, a 7 by 7 by 7 matrix of individual faces, emotions that are very close to each other that kind of blend emotionally and graphically. What this has been, we thought, so this was a great idea. What do you use it for? So we use it for social networking. It's not really working out for that. People are using that for treating emotional disorders, for autism, and for people, you know, dealing with stroke, and in order to understand and express themselves. You know, like kids with autism can relate to a cartoon expression because it's just the information. There's not you. There's not your personality. There's not all your thoughts and judgments there. All the distractions are gone. It's just the basic cues. Oh, I understand the emotion now, and I can see it in relation to the others.
Okay, so I'm going to paraphrase this just so that you get this.
So
he was working on a cartoon.
I'll eat the rabbit. The rabbit's cute.
Of all of the emotions possible, he ended up taking this sort of failed app cartoon to a scientist. That scientist now uses it with autistic children who can't verbalize how they feel, but they can point to a specific emotion, not happy or sad, but the, you know, 1/18th degree to the left of the emotion, and say, that's how I feel.
And you're going to go finely tuned. From there, like, yeah, almost, it's not quite bitter, but it's really close to bitter.
And so the autistic child can point and stretch and find the face on this app to express how they're feeling. so that they themselves can understand how they're feeling, and so that this therapist can then help them.
An interesting thing is, if you ask one person what...
It's really, I mean, it's a big project. I have to say, it's really, yes.
But if you ask one person what apathy means...
Going to mean different things
and then you ask someone else what apathy... Someone will say, well, apathy, well, that's totally neutral. It's like blank face. But somebody else will be like, no, apathy is more like a... It's something that's disaffected.
Right.
And our emotional vocabulary is complex, and shockingly, emotions can be subjective in the language we use.
Yes,
and
right.
this eliminates that layer of translation.
That's brilliant.
Because we recognize people with Botox. You might have read in the New York Times they're using Botox to treat depression because, you know, when you just like start getting that depressed face, well, it just makes you more depressed. But people with Botox they found were slow to empathize because it might be a personality defect. But a bigger part is that when someone gives you that, starts talking to you and starts getting that look like, all right, this is going to be intimate talk. So immediately you start to match their expression. And your mirror neurons start to help you internalize what that feeling is. And so, so being able to see things, to relate on that visual, that visceral level,
right.
Without words to translate, and you don't have to interpret it, someone else can look at it and go, yeah, okay, now I know what you're feeling.
But the other thing that the New York Times, the Tuesday Science section is like my favorite thing in the week. I learn everything that's wrong with my body that I need to be fixing or vice versa, what I need to stop doing. But last week they were saying that people they're using Botox to treat depression because if they can Botox you into a grin, it actually affects mood in people who are seriously depressed.
Mm-hmm. So the physicality can affect the mental.
I mean,
I understand.
There's that laugh therapy where people like stand around and they say, all right, we're all going to get together and we're going to laugh. And they go, and then they just do a fake laugh until pretty soon it turns infectious and everyone just starts laughing and they giggle and it turns into a real laugh.
Yes, no, it's infectious. It is infectious, yes.
Nothing more infectious than a laugh.
Nothing more infectious than
a smile.
A comedy club is so much funnier than watching a comedy video.
Yes.
Because everybody around you is laughing.
It's everyone around you, right, yes. So good for your health. Something that's really good for my health are my sponsors. So I'm going to do a quick little sponsor break. And we're going to be right back so that we can hear Pat read. We'll be right back.
Voss Artesian Water from Norway. Splendidly still or luxuriously sparkling. Voss Artesian Water from Norway. Want to learn from Chicago's #1 culinary arts school? Kendall College now offers a certificate training program and individual cooking classes. Go to taste.kendall.edu for more information.
Watching on the Sun Times, we're back with Pat Byrnes,
Checking
Sara
my
Paretsky,
teeth to make sure there's nothing in it. Okay, good.
Rick Bayless.
There is something in my teeth. Dang.
He's going to read from his new book, Captain Dad. Go ahead.
Well, should I use this or that? Or
whatever you would like, however you would like.
Well, if this thing works, then I can use this. Use the technology. Since creativity has been a common theme, I'm going to do the same thing as Sarah and read something about food, except nobody gets eaten. Well, I'm working with a theme here. This is from Captain Dad, The Manly Art of Stay-at-Home Parenting.
Yay!
Ask for it by name. And this is from the chapter called Let's Do Lunch. You can eat off the floor in my kitchen. In fact, if you're willing to get down on your hands and knees, you could probably cobble together an entire meal. Of course, it would consist entirely of crumbs. Yes, crumbs. Crumbs. I spend a ridiculous amount of time sweeping up crumbs. Blizzards of them. It doesn't matter what the kids are eating. Bananas. There will be crumbs. Like sawdust at a mill, they fly with every buzz, cut, and nibble. No matter how many times I tell my kids to eat over their plates. If I used a rake instead of a broom, I could create my own Zen garden underneath the kitchen table. So I sweep after every meal, after every snack, after every time I just finished sweeping, but someone just had to come back for one more bite of something she hadn't quite finished. Like brunch after the Sermon on the Mount. You'd be astounded at the crumbus fallout one last little bite can rain on your freshly swept floor. Unless you have kids, that is. Then you know too painfully well. A lazy man might suggest putting it off till the end of the day and sweeping them up all at once. I know because I was that lazy man. And you know what I found out? I found out that a truly lazy man will sweep early and often. Because if he doesn't, tiny little feet will ferry those crumbs to every corner of the house. Like busy bees pollinating a grove of very flat polyurethane trees. I can't tell you how many times I have found what I thought were maggots in the baby's room. Only to be relieved that it was only dried rice. Only to be unrelieved at the subsequent thought of what other natural ant baits were hiding there. So, sweep. Learn to love it. And I do, sort of. I mean, sweeping does have a Zen-like appeal. It's a time I get to send the kids out of the room, shrieking, "Don't walk in my dirt!" just like my mother used to. And savor a moment's relative relief from my two little entropy machines. So long as I don't think about the chaos that is going on in the next room while I'm restoring order to the kitchen floor. And nobody got eaten.
All this talk about food, I think it's time that we check into Carrie's kitchen again and see what she's making for our entrees. We have so many people here tonight that we're a little backed up in the kitchen, but it's all coming out. Let's check and see what Carrie's doing.
Welcome back. Now we're going to finish up with our entree. So for tonight, we've created a dish just for the dinner party, which is a ravioli of the rabbit confit with grain mustard, fins herb, a beautiful carrot puree, and then we're finishing it with a fresh juice carrot broth with hen of the wood mushrooms. So now we're going to start with the dough. Don't be intimidated. We've made a classic pasta dough. Only work with the amount of dough that you can handle. And once you reach your desired thickness of the dough, you just keep running it through that same number. We're going to egg wash lightly. Don't go crazy with the egg wash. The tendency is to always overstuff. And whether you're making turnovers, strudel, less is more. Make sure that your carrot puree is not too wet. Sometimes late in the winter, the squash or carrots can get a little moisture from the winter storage. Working quickly, you form it, just like that. We're gonna make a nice classic round ravioli. And now we're gonna cook them. So we have a lot of garnish here. We have some tarragon oil, fresh tarragon blended with olive oil. That's going to enhance the dish. Tarragon leaves, little chervil leaves, chives, red watercress, and pea shoots. We have some pickled mustard seeds, confit garlic. There's no fear of pungency because it's cooked in duck fat. We're going to add a little ginger, black pepper, nutmeg, and clove, You can add even a little green cardamom to your fresh squeezed carrot juice. So we squeeze our own carrot juice, but if you don't have a juicer, then buy fresh carrot juice from your grocery store and then infuse it. We've taken the carrot broth and then we've strained it out and we've infused it with those ingredients. The rabbit confit, that there isn't enough film in the camera to show you how to make a confit. So basically, in this beautiful, lovely copper pot, we have the rabbit that has been picked thoroughly. Look how beautiful that is. Picked, and it has a little bit of duck fat there, and that's going to garnish our dish. Here we have flavorful rabbit stock that we're going to cook our raviolis in. Get rid of the myth of plunging your pasta in ice water, running your pasta in a colander in your sink, running cold water off of it. Because what you're doing is you're getting rid of all the starch, you're getting rid of all the flavor of the pasta. When you cook your pasta, ravioli is a different scenario because we want that rabbit flavor in it. Save some of your pasta water. Save a cup or two, and then toss your pasta with your olive oil or your tomato sauce, but add some of the pasta water to it because you're adding more flavor into it. Just coat them with a little bit of oil so they don't stick to each other. So we're going to start to plates. Once you've chosen your bowl, I'm going to do a little carrot puree on the bottom just to anchor the ravioli. Place your ravioli in the bowl. A little dab of the confit rabbit, just as an extra bonus. Put the hen of the woods mushroom as a little bouquet. We're going to sauce with the fresh carrot broth. A little salad of watercress, shaved red radish, and pea shoot for that little touch of spring. A ravioli of rillette of rabbit with carrot puree, roasted hen of the woods mushrooms, confit rabbit, freshly juiced carrot broth, and a salad of pea shoots and radish. Hope you enjoyed the dinner party. I'm Carrie Nahabedian from Brondi and Naha Restaurant.
And by the time
Carrie is, again, this is just an enormous crowd for us. So Carrie is plating maniacally, so she's going to be coming out soon. So Rick and I were talking during the video, and we were thinking, well, they're writers, and they get to read something funny. So Rick has decided to give us a little something himself.
Okay. So when somebody writes a cookbook, they never expect to be standing in front of a couple hundred people reading from their cookbook. So tonight, this is a first. I have never read from one of my cookbooks ever in public. I'm going to read for you Watermelon Ginger Guacamole.
Stir.
Scoop the cubed watermelon into a vacuum sealing bag, sprinkle with tequila, and then vacuum seal it. Refrigerate it while you make the guacamole. Cut the avocados in half, running the knife around the pit from top to bottom, and then back up again. Twist the halves in opposite directions to release the pit from one side of each avocado. Then remove the pit. Scoop the flesh from each half into a large bowl. With an old-fashioned potato masher, perhaps a large fork, or the back of a large spoon, coarsely mash that avocado. Grate the zest from half of a lime into the avocado. Juice the lime and squeeze 2 tablespoons of that juice into those avocados. Then finely grate ginger into the avocados. Measure about a half a teaspoon of that grated ginger. Add it to the avocado along with some green chili, some herbs. Stir to combine. Then taste and season with salt. Cover with plastic wrap, press directly onto the surface of the guacamole, and refrigerate it until you're ready to serve. Now, right before carrying that guacamole to your guests, release the vacuum seal from the watermelon. Gently stir half, not all, but half of that watermelon into the guacamole. Scoop the mixture into a serving dish and top it with the remaining watermelon.
Rick Bayless, reading from his cookbook on the dinner party. Very fun. Great segue. I think we now have Carrie Nahabedian joining us. She's finally here from the kitchen.
I just got my butt kicked by a recipe.
Come on out, Carrie.
I don't know what was better, when actors doing Yelp reviews.
Really, actors doing Yelp reviews.
Come join us. Have a seat. That was great.
Get this woman a glass of wine, please.
Yes, get this woman a glass of wine. Let's make her some room. So, Carrie, one of the things I noticed, what I loved about this ravioli is it wasn't heavy. You know, usually you have ravioli and the sauce overweighs it, and this was so light and lovely. So
Beautiful,
thank you for that.
beautiful.
Good,
yes.
thank you.
The mushrooms are so yummy.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
So in your videos, you talk a lot about your family. Your mother was cooked when you were young, and water, yes. Your mother cooked when you were young, and you have that sense growing up of cooking all throughout your years. I'm wondering, for the two of you actually, but we'll start with Carrie, if you see the Chicago community as a family in cooking.
Oh, absolutely. We're a very tight-knit community. A lot of individuals today are at a fundraiser for a chef friend of ours that needed a lot of help for his family, and the community rallies together. It's a very, I think what brought it all together is the fact that we have that Midwestern roots, and even if a chef comes from New York or San Francisco or LA and they come here and make Chicago their home, they feel that Midwestern warmth and they become it. And then we have, thank you, we have the markets that keep us together, Green City Market, where over 150 restaurants buy their produce. So I think it's just, we always say if one succeeds, we all succeed. If a restaurant closes, it's so bad for the whole community. I mean, we all grieve when someone decides, for whatever reason, to close their doors. So I think what makes our city so great is that there is a sense of a true love and passion for the city and everything that it comes.
It's very interesting to me that when people do events, big companies do events all across the United States, they always say they usually start off in New York, and they will host all these chefs, and the chefs don't talk to each other, and they do their event, and it's all done. And then they come to Chicago, and they go, what happened here? It's like all the chefs, we all know each other, we're really good friends, and it's just, it's a really wonderful community to be in.
Yes, it's so true. So, something you had mentioned earlier, I was at the International Association of Culinary Professionals conference that was here. You were there as well. And there was a panel of chefs, Omaro Cantu from Moto, Billy Kim, and Donnie Medea, and they were talking about how a very small group of people in Denmark decided to get together, and they had an idea for a different way to take food. They got some support from the government, and they went out and marketed themselves, but just a very small group of people did this and have become a world phenomenon. And the same is true with Spain. A very small group of people went out and marketed what Spain had to offer. And I'm wondering, with all that we have going on in Chicago, I'd like to see that happen in our city. I mean, we're just so innovative when it comes to food. There's so much of that. How come we haven't seen it come together quite yet as one idea?
Well, we have seen it. Luckily, we had two mayors, Mayor Daley and Mayor Emanuel, that are very supportive of the culinary community and the arts and bringing tourism to Chicago, because I think the first off, Rick can expound on it, but the fact that O'Hare has, you can go and have a great meal.
Yay! Fronteras at O'Hare.
At American, and I think now it's at United. But they're changing that because we got to change the image that some people just come to Chicago just for the day and they don't even get to eat in a restaurant. So at least if they are at O'Hare, they can try a torta, so they can eat something from one of the restaurants in the city. But I think we are there. I mean, we're knocking on New York's door to, do like what the Grammys do, like 1 year in LA, 1 year in New York, possibly for the Beard Awards. The fact that Michelin has identified New York, Chicago, and San Francisco as the driving forces of America.
Absolutely.
So absolutely, I couldn't agree more. Yeah. And we now have as many Diamond Star restaurants in Chicago as we do in New York.
Yep.
So I think absolutely we're there, but I'm wondering about that marketing idea, so that we could promote it around the world together.
Well, when we opened our doors, I said Chicago would never be on the map the way that we are now unless we could get great local agriculture and get every chef in Chicago to cook something that had the Chicago flavor to it.
Yes.
To me, that's really important because, yes, we do Mexican food, but we do Mexican food with our local products, which means that it has the flavor of Chicago. You will never taste any food anywhere in the world that tastes like the food that we do at Frontera because it's all inspired by the regional cooking of Mexico, but it's all Chicago food. That's what we're really all about.
And I think this is so important. So this is a great segue to your foundation. So the Frontera Farmers Foundation, which is, will you explain it for people?
We give capital improvement grants, basically, to all of these Midwestern farms that apply for grants. So in the last almost 10 years that we have been in existence, we have invested $1.3 million in local family farms. And we have done that like $10,000 at a time. If a farm needs a new watering system, maybe they need a vehicle to transport their goods to a farmer's market, maybe they need a hoop house or a greenhouse, that's the kind of things that we support. And we do that because we know that these small family farms are what Carrie and I and all the other great Chicago chefs need in order to define what the Chicago flavor is. Without the farmers, we are nothing.
Can I ask?
Yes, we all need to do a round of applause for the farmers.
What's the geographical, distance, in terms of distance from?
Our foundation is all Midwestern. So any of the 5 states that comprises the Midwest, anybody in that area can apply for a grant from our foundation. However, most of the people that know about our foundation tend to be sort of circling around Chicago. So southern Wisconsin, the state of Illinois, northern Indiana, some of the eastern side of Iowa, those are the places that we tend to attract most of the farmers that apply.
The Green City Market goes all the way to Kentucky, Capriel Farm, Burton's Maple Syrup.
It's amazing.
The walnuts are now coming 20 miles inside of Tennessee. So the rabbit dish that you had, that was all local. Everything except the mustard seed. The rabbits were from Illinois. The pea shoots from Tracy Vole, 3 sisters. She used to work with Rick when they first opened. The watermelon radish from Nichols. What else was on the dish? The mushroom. Okay, the mushroom. we had a little help with the River Valley, but there's, we cheated a little bit there. But you got the local winter, early spring fare.
The hardest time of the year to cook.
Hardest time of the year.
It's the brown season. It's the brown season. It is absolutely the hardest. Some of my chefs said to me last week, "When is this going to end?"
Yeah.
Even the farmers had no more root vegetables.
No.
Like there was the onions. It was like the parsnips, the Cinderella.
Right.
It was all
rutabaga. It said out on the Nichols. Even the rutabaga said out.
Even 40,000 pounds of rutabaga is gone.
But this is such an important point because if you don't have local produce,
you can't have local cuisine. And without local cuisine, you're lacking in local culture. It's hard to really help to define that local culture if that local culture doesn't have a local food. Would you agree?
I will tell you this one little anecdotal thing that happened to me 27 years ago when we opened our restaurant. And there was a very well-known chef in town, and he came out in the press and said, I would never, ever buy anything local. There is nothing worth eating in Illinois, okay? He said that. Now, that's 27 years ago. And I said, I'm going to prove the exact opposite, but we have to build the system first. There's plenty of people out there that can help us build that system. And I knew that there were chefs that would look at that food and say, whoa, this is so much better than anything that we can buy off the commodity market. And it's certainly not as expensive as shipping stuff in from the four corners of the globe.
I have a wonderful tweet for Carrie. Yeah, no, it's really important that you would never say that in Illinois today. 27 years later, you would never say that today.
Not at all.
At Marjorie, I hope I'm doing this right, at Marjorie May 34, what are the 5 things every person should keep in their kitchen?
Ooh. I think we're going to be on opposite ends of the spectrum here, but please, Carrie, start.
And I should say that this person has won a cooking class for 2 with Carrie Nahabedian.
Nice.
Okay.
It's a big deal. It's a really big deal.
Well, you're going to have a lot of fun. We've had a lot of great cooking classes at Grundy. By demand, we used to do it when we opened Naha, but then it got to be too crazy.
And I hope you like her 5 things, because that's what you're going to be cooking with. Okay?
I always get nervous when they say 5 things, because I'm hoping you always have salt and olive oil.
Right, so let's hope for the basics. Yeah, okay.
But my 5 things, I have to have lemon. I have to have lemon, and I need milk. But to cook with, I cook my 5 ingredients I go to the store for, because in my house, I went on a big health kick. So in my house, I have skim milk, cottage cheese, mandarin oranges.
Good luck, people.
Good luck. Good luck. I always want somebody to come to my house and say they can make a meal what's in my refrigerator. Because I have yogurt and tons of wine and champagne. So I would say the 5 things, I need lemon, I need a good ribeye, garlic, olive oil, and I love fennel. Fennel is one of my favorites.
Fresh fennel?
And
fresh fennel, Bob.
So what would you say? I'm curious.
Okay,
and then I'm also curious what you 2 would say, but yes.
Okay, so for me, I would start off with beans, because to me, I can't live without beans, and they could be canned beans, they could be dry beans, depending on how much time you want to invest in all this. But I always have canned beans on my shelf at home, because I don't always have 2 hours to cook a pot of beans. Okay, so beans, that's number 1.
I forgot to bring them home from the restaurant.
And I forgot to bring them home from the restaurant. That's so true. Okay, my next thing that I always have to have, it's 2 things kind of together, okay? It's either bacon or chorizo sausage, okay? So I know it's like a total slam dunk. You can just say, everybody, I cannot cook without a cured pork product, okay? It's like, to me, cured pork is really it, okay? Now, I also have to have something that is citrusy, but my tastes go to lime, not to lemon. Carrie's goes to lemon because of her background. Mine goes to lime. So that would be number 3 in there. I have to have chilies, but I would probably say that because my tastes run more toward dried chilies than fresh chilies, not that I don't like fresh chilies, I do, but if I had to choose one, I would choose a can of Chipotle chilies. Okay, so that's my number 4. Because it's smoky and spicy, and it'll give me everything there. And then I would say that probably the last thing that I would have to absolutely have would be some fresh cilantro in my refrigerator. Come on, can I have some applause for cilantro?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
What about you 2? So I would add sriracha to that.
I get that. It's like peanut butter, jelly, mac, cheese.
Those are 2.
That's 4.
Bread.
And beer.
Sarah?
But good local beer. I mean, well, I'll go as far as Kalamazoo for Bell's.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. Matilda, my favorite beer, Matilda, Goose Island.
Yeah, Goose Island.
Although Lagunitas is in the house, and they are taking things over by storm.
Yeah,
they are.
Yes,
I live like half mile from Half Acre, so it's.
All right, okay, fair enough.
No, I got the right.
And Sarah?
Crime Spree magazine just sent out a little questionnaire. They asked, what will you always find in my refrigerator? And I wrote back and said, you will always find horseradish because I buy a fresh jar every year for Passover, put it on the Seder plate, put it back in the refrigerator. Next Passover comes around, I throw out that jar and buy a new jar. But,
That's perfect.
I guess there's a lot of yogurt in my refrigerator too, and I use yogurt instead of making sauces. And now, please, this is embarrassing. So they're not listening to me, but so mushrooms are like one of my favorite foods, and mushrooms, kale, broccoli. I saute the mushrooms.
That is so healthy.
I know it's boring, isn't it? And then I pour in some whole milk yogurt instead of making a sauce. And
no, that's good. That's super good. I do the same thing. I think it's delicious.
And that's my lazy woman's dinner.
Oh.
Wow, very good for you.
Good.
And no chocolate in your. Everybody should be getting their most chocolate by now. I'm surprised no one said chocolate because that's a must.
Well, yeah, I mean, for me, that's have to be number 6.
Well, it's coffee.
For me, but that's for me.
Okay, so now I have a tweet.
85% or higher.
Of dark cocoa.
Oh.
Yes. So now I have, hopefully everybody's opening your Vosges at this point. Now I have a tweet for the whole table, and then I also have a question for the whole table, my own
Table
question.
tweet.
Table tweet. This person, hey, how handy. This person is going to win a tower. I'm not kidding you. A tower of Vosges chocolate. Hannah Zelig, nice job. How do you think playtime and creativity are impacted by technology? Before you came out, we were talking about how to be creative and how to keep those creative juices flowing. I'll start with Pat because he doesn't yet have chocolate in his mouth. So how do you think playtime and creativity are impacted by technology?
You took yours home.
I can't eat chocolate.
My daughter was asking me on the way home from school today about, because other kids at school, they get a lot more computer time.
Yes. Other kids get a lot more computer time.
And I thought, well, they'll make an interesting experiment. Let's take their test scores. And we'll grid them, put them on a grid, but their test scores correlated to computer time. And so, quit complaining about not getting enough time on the computer.
Oh, because their test scores were lower.
Yeah, because she does well, because we don't let her be on the computer, so she has to do that crazy thing called reading.
I see.
So she's learned to love books. And the paper kind too. We don't do any of that like we did on a tablet. I mean, no, it's like you learn to read a book. It's cool. It's exciting.
So you think technology hurts our creativity, our playtime creativity?
Yes, actually, we succumbed a little bit and let our daughter play with Minecraft. And because all the kids are talking about, all right, fine, go ahead, so just so you can talk to your classmates, and but she got sucked in, but it was fortunately for a very short time, and she's over it, but she got sucked in, and my wife said to me, it's like, oh, I can totally see why girls are outpacing boys in learning test scores in college, entrance, and just like in college graduation, because the boys are getting sucked into computer games, and it's a time sink.
Yes, right.
Yes. It is
we
a
know this
time
for adults,
sink.
not just for
and
kids.
I mean, yes, it helps you with certain spatial skills and knowing how to work a mouse. Great, that you can go operate a machine.
The opposite.
But I don't. They're tools.
Yes, they're tools.
They're
okay.
tools.
And I will say,
tools.
well, I don't know about the games because I'm not a gamer, so I won't say anything about that. But I have to say that the creativity in our chefs' meetings is always enhanced by technology, because we'll be there just throwing out ideas, and somebody's on their phone pulling up something that then adds something to the conversation.
The accessibility, yeah, I'll agree with you there.
The accessibility is just amazing to me that we could do, or I could be writing a recipe and I'm stuck with something and I just need to have a list of herbs. And so I just go, I go on my phone and write list of herbs. And so I come up with this stuff and it's like, I go down it, oh yeah, that's the one. That's the one that's right for this recipe. And then I'm right on to the next stage. So accessibility to me is amazing. And I can work so much faster than I ever was able to work in the past.
So if you're using it as a tool, which you are, then it's great.
Yes.
If you're using it as a diversion, it's a time sink.
Yes, I agree with that.
So, I mean, so yeah, it can be a great thing. And I use it, for research. I mean, I'm sure like Sara uses it for research all the time, just like find out, how do I know this detail without having to take a week on a steamer?
I always wonder what NSA is thinking about all the websites that I go to, like the Anarchist Cookbook.
The Anarchist Cookbook is a favorite.
Attic. So you can, if you want, you can just come over and you
yeah,
flip
I was
through,
writing a short story where somebody was making a homemade bomb using a furnace, newspaper, and ammonia.
Oh, they're tracking you, Sara. They're tracking you. Okay, so now that everybody has their chocolate and we are winding down a little bit, we are going to stay for drinks and we're going to be here. So hopefully you'll stay with us as well. Rick is going to be signing cookbooks and he's going to be at that table over there. And you are also signing books and Pat's going to be at that table over there. And then Kendall College is here. They also are selling cookbooks. So I want you to stay, hang with us. It's been great to have you here.
And Mr. Kendall will be signing them?
And yes, you'll be signing them.
Mr. Kendall from the Kendall?
No, not Mr. Kendall. I have one quick question for you all before you go. One-word answers. Favorite junk food down the line?
It's a compound word, chips and salsa.
Yay, chips and salsa. I don't even think of that as junk food. That's how low my junk food is. Your favorite junk food?
Tortilla chips.
What? That's not even junk food. I don't think. It is? Okay. Well, it's got corn. I don't know. That's
corn. We're talking snack food.
Okay, snack food. Favorite junk food snack?
Gummy bears.
Ooh, yummy. I'll go with that. Yes?
Donuts.
I'll say peanut brittle. Okay, that's our show. It's been great to have you here. I want to thank everybody for coming. Your energy just helps us along the way. Thank you so much. Please look at the screens. It takes an enormous amount of people to put this show together. So I thank my entire crew. I, of course, thank City Winery because they know what they're doing, and it's been an awful lot of fun to be with them. I also thank Pat Byrnes for coming tonight. Sara Paretsky. Chef Carrie Nahabedian. Rick Bayless. I have the very tricky job of being Elysabeth Alfano. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Stick around, have a good time. We are back on May 12th with Chef Pete from The Gauge, Kathy Hart from the Eric and Kathy Morning Show, actor Mark Grapey, and then there's a little band called Wilco. The drummer of Wilco, Glenn Cochie's going to be here May 12th. See you everybody on May 12th. Stick around tonight. Nice.